And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another AFLW round review. Round 9 is over, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, the issue with the 10-game season is it goes too damn fast, but it is over. We got to talk AFLW. And joining me today, a very good friend of mine who has recently found a lot of success when it comes to one of her one of her tweets by our beloved Sydney Swans, a fellow Swans supporter in this one. We're going to try not to gush too much this round, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Polly, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, and very excited to talk all things round nine.
Well, that is fantastic. I know you and I have both been on the Bevy of Bloods podcast and we talk nothing but swans. So this is just going to be the littlest bit different, but I know you are a footy head just as much as me. So let's get into it. Hopping into round 9. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, the little pieces of this round, your just thoughts of overall on round 9, because you joined me for what has to be another one of a run of incredible rounds to end this season.
Something about this back end of the season has just been phenomenal. We've had perfect rounds after perfect rounds after perfect rounds of close games and rivalries and just phenomenal outcomes. So it's to be on for this round in particular is amazing. I'm very excited. But yeah, it's just great for the game, seeing how close everything is and how everything's shaping up. It is leading for a very, very good final round going into the finals, that's for sure.
Definitely upsets, instant classics, and some absolute cracking games of footy for sure. And to see a couple of results that I think I've been waiting for a couple of rounds is absolutely fantastic. Let's jump into it game by game. Let's break it down. As Sydney supporters, I have to say it. I do have a little bit of a soft spot for our rivals in GWS, and it was difficult to watch this game on Friday as the Gold Coast Suns beat the Giants by 31. The Suns looking ever more closer to making a finals appearance for the first time in their history.
Yeah, this was as I would agree, I have a very big soft spot for the Giants, especially the Giants girls. I was a Giants Foundation member, like a women's foundation member, because there was no Swans team initially. So it does hurt when they lose. And this was actually the Gold Coast first time beating WS as well. So look, that all that being said, the Gold Coast did play phenomenally. They look so good. I really hope they cement themselves a really good finals position so they get a home final. Um, and I guess like in the nuts and bolts, I think the GWS just ran out of gas. It was actually pretty neck and neck up until about half time, and then they just couldn't keep up, which I think has been a problem for them throughout the season so far, unfortunately. But yeah, look, I really like this Gold Coast team as well. For me, this is like two teams that I really like, and I really want to see them do well. So um, there was good and bad.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I know for some people there are Swan supporters there that they look at this Gold Coast team and go, man, it'd be great to have Charlie Rowbottom, but I knew she'd stay at Gold Coast. She's got a very, very nice situation there at the Gold Coast. And this year having some great standout stars like Claudia Whitford had herself another classic game, and Tara Bohannon and Jack Tapai look absolutely fantastic. This is a Gold Coast team, if they can get on the right run, could be quite the dangerous team in the bottom part of the bracket, in the elimination type of the part of the bracket when it comes to it, because they've got tons of talent. They've got a great midfield. Their defense is really, really good. So they're going to be a team that I'm going to be fascinated to watch. I 100% agree with you. I think the Giants' issue is that their style that they're trying to play is very difficult to go for 4 quarters and be at their top level. So, and before we get off this game, probably what I think should be a meme is, did you see the Zarly Goldsworthy helping herself off the ground?
I've been
Part
thinking
of
about it
that
all
game?
weekend. It was fantastic. Like she's already doing so much just good on the field generally, and then to do that because it was just surrounded by Suns players. It was so good. It's so funny. I was like, that's definitely going to be a meme that the Giants, social team will definitely co-opt. I think, and I think all AFL Twitter should jump on that one.
I'm trying to figure out what part was funny. Her reaction on how she was just like, eh, forget it, I'm
Okay.
doing it. Or the announce team absolutely in stitches as they're trying to describe it because like Meg McDonald is like, I'm gonna put that into my back pocket and I'm gonna do it. I'm like, none of your teammates are not gonna help their skipper up. But it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. Kind of
Yeah.
felt bad because she kind of looked at her teammates after that and she was like, seriously, pull your heads in. Where were you?
Where were you? How am I
Exactly.
surrounded by 15 Suns players?
Yeah, so that was it gave me a smile and she's an absolute superstar. I love Zoe Goldsworthy. She's so much fun to watch. She's going to be an absolute jet as the years go on. She's going to be so much fun to watch and she's only 18 years old, which is kind of scary to think
It is
about.
scary.
So we'll jump to it. We'll jump to Casey Fields. If we thought the wind at Henson Park was interesting, it's always fun at Casey Fields, and Melbourne just play it so well. As the Melbourne Demons beat the Fremantle Dockers 61-28, a 33-point win, and the D's just look just so good. They're definitely going to be in the running for a flag this year with their depth and talent that they have on an incredible list for the D's.
Yeah. They really showed why they're premiership favorites and 95% chance that they'll finish number one. They just know how to put teams away. Like again, it was similar to the Gold Coast GWS game where it felt it was kind of close towards the start and then they just pulled away. Um, One thing that I've noticed is that they aren't the best in front of goals. Obviously, it was very windy at that field, so I give them a little bit of leeway. But if you look at the entire season, they've tended to have more behinds than goals or parity. And I'm just wondering, coming into finals and some big, harder competition, maybe that's going to come back and bite them if they can't get their kicking in front of goal in shape.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know that they're so deep in each line. Like there's six, seven. They bat so deep in this list that I think that they'll be okay. But this is just shows how good they are when it's like Eden Zanka, Kate Hort. It's what poison do you want to take when you play the D's? It's absolutely insane. Sometimes watching this team and thinking that they have a midfield where Paxi Paxman can go to the wing. That's how deep their midfield is. So this is
She had,
a scary proposition for sure.
yeah, she had an absolutely massive game as well.
Mhm.
A proper captain's game, that one. Yeah, couldn't speak highly enough of her. She was everywhere.
Definitely, for sure. And we'll jump to it. Probably what many people would call the upset of the season as the St. Kilda Saints knock off the Brisbane Lions at RSEA Park in Melbourne 55-34. And I watched this game in just pure and utter amazement because this is the Brisbane Lions team that you kind of in the back of your head went, they should win this. This shouldn't be a very difficult. Yes, they're going to Melbourne, but it shouldn't be. And as I watched this game play out, I was just like, what is going on? Like it just did not compute. Like my brain was smoking. I could not believe what I
Yeah,
was watching because it just did not compute with anything that had previously happened when it comes to the Brisbane Lions.
yeah, it just didn't look like the Lions. It looked like a completely different team. It not in a, not in a good way. Like
Mhm.
I felt like again, all of those games in Melbourne on Saturday had really bad wind. And I don't know if St Kilda managed to time their ends of the field better than Brisbane, and it happened to be something like that. But uh, you know what? It doesn't look good for Brisbane coming into finals. They've got to play Melbourne next week, as we'll talk about in a little bit. And this game really didn't help them. I think they really needed to win this one. And but that all being said, the Saints played phenomenally. They moved the ball so well. So yeah, I like honestly hands down a stellar performance from St Kilda, which I didn't expect to see for sure. I don't think anyone expected to see best game they've played all year for sure.
Yeah, I think some people expected St. Kilda to be towards the bottom of the ladder and for them to be
Mm.
sitting as we speak in ninth place, only sent percentage points behind a certain club we shall not mention currently, outside
Yeah,
of the finals. It's absolutely mental that the way things are going. And I agree with you. Like Brisbane is they're reeling a little bit off this. And having to face Melbourne this week and potentially being fourth, which then means you could get Melbourne again the following week in the finals. It's like this is a murderer's row for this Brisbane team.
Yeah.
They're talented. They still are one of the top four teams. They're still probably going to be able to go into an elimination final if they lose that qualifier, and they're talent wise going to be better than whoever they face. But it is kind of, you kind of look at it and you go, OMG, like this team is not coming in with any positive momentum into the finals. You just never know what may happen. So,
Yeah.
and the way this season has been, you just never know when an upset might happen. So it's
Yeah.
Coach Starcevich has got a lot of things to try to figure
Yeah.
out over the next couple of rounds, and it is going to be a Herculean effort to try to get this Brisbane
Yeah.
team together, because they have been, of the big four, they've been quite easily the worst when it comes to not only record but just performances, because they've had a
Yeah.
couple of stinkers this year in really bad possible times. So we'll jump over to Windy Hill, also in Melbourne, which literally lived up to its name, as Windy Hill hosted the Essendon, as Essendon faced the Carlton Blues, and Essendon gets a 32-point win, 56-24. The talent of this Essendon Bombers team has got them on the precipice of its first ever finals in the AFLW competition in only its second season. I have to say, it is impressive to watch this Dons team, because Bonnie Too Good and Maddie Prasparkas have been absolutely fantastic this season.
Yeah. It was again just completely outplayed Carlton. Carlton looked like a different team against Essendon, just did not show up at all. Essendon just ran away with it again. It was one of those really windy days. I literally wrote the same thing, Windy Hill, living up to its name. And yeah, I look, all credit to Too Good and Prasparkas, because that is one dynamite combination. And honestly, coming into finals, I don't want to go up against those two. They are just a, elite. It's an elite combination. And also a good shout out to Too Good. That was her 50th goal she got for the season in that game. So very, very exciting for her.
Yeah, and Bonnie's one of my favorites. I absolutely love her. She's fantastic. In fact, I've joked on this podcast. I gave her a dad nickname. Do you want to hear it? I know some of the people that listen to the podcast all the time are like, Coach, you pull this out every week. But I nickname her Justice. Bonnie just is too good.
I love it. It's too good.
It's such a
uh,
dad joke. I
yeah.
know, but it's just kind of funny. She's so much fun to watch. And then Maddie Prasparkas through the middle has been great. This is Georgia Nanscon's
So
coming back from her ACL tear. This is an Essendon team that they've benefited from from a very strong VFLW team, and some really good signings in that original recruiting period. So this is an Essendon team. They're dangerous. They're very, very
they're
dangerous on their day. So they're going to be
and
fun
they're
to
so
watch in the
fun to
finals.
watch.
Exactly.
The only thing I will say is they probably should have won by more. They kind of let Carlton get a little bit back on them at the end,
Mhm.
which look, it's fine. It's not the end of the world, but when you're kind of potentially could finish fourth, depending on how things play out this weekend, um, you probably want as much percentage points as you can get. So you don't want to lose, like concede too many of those not great goals. So
Mhm.
that was just like one thing that I did notice towards the end of the game.
Yeah, leaking a couple of goals late may have cost them a qualifying final spot, but in the long run, making finals is huge, and they're a dangerous team. I think even if they are finishing fifth, I think they'll be okay. So it'll be fun to watch for sure. So we'll jump out to Perth and Mineral Resources Park, and West Coast fall to the Western Bulldogs. And this was a game that had me gripped, because I was
It was
worried.
so even.
I was worried for the Duggies, because I'm like, I didn't want them to have what the Swans had last year, and that's an 0-10 season, no wins. This was their perfect opportunity to get a win before the final game, and the relief and the joy on their faces as the final siren went, and all of that, even the tears of Ellie Blackburn as she's being interviewed after the end of the game. Like, I understand. Some people are like, why are you crying? You won a game between two absolute horribly teams. Like, I want to say something that I really shouldn't, but they're two shit teams. But I get it. The Western Bulldogs have been through so much this year. absolutely anything that possibly can happen to this team, it seemed like happened. Coaching upheaval, player injuries, players out of form, everything that possibly could go wrong for this Doggies team seems to have had. So there was a smile on my face as I saw as the final siren went on because I was so happy for them because they have played really really well. I think there was a lot of stick given to them after the game against the Swans last week because they kind of rolled. Pardon the dog pun here. They kind of rolled over a little bit after about halfway through the third quarter, and let Sydney kind of punch on a little too much. So for them to go out west and get a big win and to get the 4 points to not be on the bottom with no points is fantastic. Ellie Blackburn's an incredible leader. Absolutely love her to death. This is a Doggies team that I'm not expecting them to be down there again next year. I'm expecting them to come back from their injury woes and be a solid side. It's one of those, the relief was great to see. And the Eagles, this is just a team that they're just in so much flux this season. They've been great, they've been horrible. They've been great, they've been horrible. And unfortunately, they were horrible in the worst possible time when the Duggies came to town.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't say they were horrible. They nearly it was like 8 points. They nearly had to come back. It was very close. But it was a great game. I fairly as well, like, to stick with that team and been there forever. It's really sad to see that team bottom out as they have. And so I feel like she finally got some reward for effort because she's carried that team on her back for this whole year. She's been the only person that's like stayed true and kept playing well. So I was really, really happy for her because it does hurt, and you don't want your marquee players seeing that season. Not that I think she would, but seeing that season and go, maybe it's time for me to move on. Maybe it's time for me to find somewhere else. And I think a win like that is going to potentially prevent something like that from happening. Um, yeah, there was excellent skills on show for what's considered the two bottom teams. Like, I thought it was a very, very good game for, yeah, basically. I don't think they're 17th and 18th, but may as well be. And it was a very gripping watch. The only thing I had complaints I had was the camera location was in a really weird position, and it was really bad coverage. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, Mineral Resources Park is not exactly known for its visibility when it comes to his perfect visibility when it comes to the camera angle. I've seen way too many games from Mineral Resources Park in that camera. It's not exactly in the greatest situation. Unfortunately, I think that's just the way their press box is set up. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, but I agree with you. Like we were kind of talking off, we were talking off mic before we got started. Is if you really look at it from 18th to 5th, there is not a ton of separation between these teams. And I think the Doggies, the reason they're down there, like I said, so many injuries. They've been through just an absolute torrid of injury. And the West Coast is kind of the same thing. They had their coaches absolute stuff up after the game against the D's. And they've been inconsistent because they've had so many facelifts on this team. So the competitiveness of this competition from 5th to 18th is much much tighter than it has been, and I'm interested to see how this goes. But I agree, 17th and 18th, they may be on the ladder, but I don't think they're the two worst teams in the competition this season so far. So we'll jump to Icon Park in Melbourne as the Geelong Cats get a nice little 38-point win over the Richmond Tigers. And speaking of injury, absolutely gripped team. This Richmond Tigers team, Katie, Brendan, Monconti, absolute classics, but they are fighting with everything they can. They're not giving up, but this team has absolutely been snake bitten this year. They're one of the teams from last year's finals that I don't think will make finals again this year. And you hate saying it, but they've been absolutely ravaged with injury, and it really has come to some of their better players. I mean, Ellie McKenzie's been out. Half of the both Hosking sisters have seen time on the sidelines. So this is another Richmond team that it's what could have been if they could have stayed healthy.
Yeah, which is it's really sad. Like, but again, it just like adds to that competitiveness that we've been talking about. Like, if all these girls were fit and healthy, I think that 100% they're playing finals because they're a good team, but they just it, shit happens in seasons, unfortunately, and the luck just hasn't gone their way this season. And it's really hard when it's only a 10 round season. There's not much you
Mhm.
can do, but I mean, Geelong. credit to them, played really, really well. There was a bit of a period there where there was not any goals happening, and was a little bit like this is potential for Richmond to come back, but they just ran away with it in the end. And um, look, it sucks. One goal five is not really what you want to see from any team.
Yeah, Chloe Shear with one of the marks of the year this year was an absolute one of the great highlights of this particular game. But I don't know about you, but I think many people that listen to the podcast that know we're both Swan supporters. Well, let's jump to the next game because I think we flash a little bit, and that is because beautiful Henson Park up in New South Wales, up in Sydney, hosts the Swans v Pies, and the Swans get a 19-point win over the Collingwood Magpies, 58-39. My lovely co-host Polly had the ability to go to this game, so I have to ask, you were at Henson Park. We won't discuss the fact that you missed part of this game due to going to get food, so we'll leave that particular part out. I mean, how awesome was this? I mean, the hill looked
Oh,
absolutely magnificent. It looked chockers. It was absolutely great to see 57,000 something. I can't remember the exact figure.
5,700.
5,700. It'd be great if 57,000. My fault.
7,000,
Shut
yeah.
up. But
It's like,
I'm just stunned. Like I was worried about this game going into the
yeah,
year as we went on because this is a Pies team. They had won four in a row. They had beat some
and
cream of the crop teams to get there. So this kind of comes out of nowhere, and this is not me being a negative Swans fan. This is just me knowing this competition and knowing how good it is.
yeah,
This by far was Sydney's best performance. I don't put too much into the doggies performance from the
yeah,
previous week. This was the best performance of the season so far, hands down. Every single person wearing the red and white for the Swans were absolutely magnificent. The Pies, it was they got choked. They really did. They got Tanya Kennedy was able to kind of quell Bree Davy. Britt Benici was kind of quiet in the long run. Sab Frederick started off the game absolutely magnificent, and then the combination of Lexi Hamilton and Bella Smith really kind of kept her quiet as the game went on. So this was just a magnificent performance. I can't gush enough about this one's performance. So Polly, take over for me before I go too much further.
yeah. I'm pretty much gonna say the same things. Like it's just become such a joy to watch this team. Like, I didn't think this time last year, or even this time 9 weeks ago, that we would have the ability to play this well and figure out ways to beat teams that on paper sound better than our team. I like even when Ali Morfitt went down a couple of weeks
Mhm.
ago, I was like, these last couple games, especially this one, is going to be so tough without her. Fun fact, she was standing in front of the line. She was in the line with me at the food stand when I couldn't watch the game. But that's a whole thing. Um, but found a way, because the thing that was very evident in the start was we really were losing that rock battle. Obviously, Sabrina Fredericks is absolutely incredible, and she was definitely the best player for Collingwood. But we found ways to move the ball without needing to get all the clearances and get all the hit outs. Like, we were tackling, we were handballing, we were kicking, we were doing everything well, and it's just so incredible to see and think about the improvement just from 7 weeks ago when we played Geelong, for example. I'd say that's probably the closest competition to the Pies that we've played. I'm not really counting the Brisbane game because they're kind of in that top four area, but um, I like it's just such a joy to watch at the moment. They're so fun to watch. They're such a good team. Like, and the thing that probably has improved the most is their forwards. Like, if you compare the Sydney forwards to the Pies forwards, they had more scoring shots, but they had more behinds, and we managed to win just because we could kick straight. And it was not easy to kick straight at Hanson Park on that day. It was apparently very windy. It was very hard to tell on the hill, but it was apparently very windy. And the fact that they managed to do that and have Beck like just galvanize that forward line, like I love watching Beck Privatelli at the moment. She's having such a good season. Um, it's just, I just love watching them. It's such a good time to be a Swans fan, and I can't wait to watch them next week and potentially the week after.
It'll be very, very interesting. And the fact that Alicia Newman was back too, I think I love Montana Burleson. She's great, but there's something that Nui does, and like her Nui's goal that she had, where she literally gets the ball in the center of the ground, gets it to Chloe Malloy, and then absolutely hightails it, kind of slows down just the littlest bit, and then gets near the Cynthia Hamilton contest for Cynthia to be able to handball it, boom, and Alicia to throw it on the boot, and for that thing to have eyes and find the center of the goals was absolutely magnificent. Like Beck Privatelli's goal that into the with the wind was absolutely like watching the behind her vision, where you see it start like dead center of the behind and then just hook perfectly right through the center of the goal. Sophia Hurley had one in the second half, same thing in the fourth quarter, where nice, beautiful use of the wind. It was defensively, they were so good. Nell Morris Dalton caused them a few issues early in the first quarter getting loose, but then Brianna Tarrant kind of went, nope, you're not doing this anymore. She shut her down. She's been another one I've absolutely loved watching. Julie O'Sullivan had another great game in the back. I mean, there wasn't a single player that I can sit here and go had a bad game for the Swans.
No,
And I'll say this before, I know we're gushing about the Swans. I want to say this as somebody that absolutely loves this competition. Thoughts and positive vibes to Ruby Slicer. Unfortunately, it has come out. She has
oh
torn her
no,
PCL. She is done for the season. Unfortunately, she's been snake bitten this year. I want to send out my thoughts to her, and good vibes that hopefully rehab goes quickly and she's back stronger than ever next season. She's an absolutely wonderful human being, absolutely magnificent character. Love listening to her on her podcast that she does this year. So I wanted to be able to have that little section to send out my good thoughts to her. I know this was a difficult day, not only for her team, but also for her with the injury that she picked up. And to see her social media and to see Chloe Malloy, her former teammate, and many of the AFLW reaching out to send good vibes to her is always fantastic. But I wanted to do that before we moved on. So, because as much as I love talking about the Swans, we must move on to what has to be considered game of the round as we go over to Norwood Oval as the Crows survive a test from the North Melbourne Roos and get a win by 3, 41-38. An absolutely magnificent game. I will throw this out. I had the luxury of listening to this game called my good friend of mine, Phil Aspinall of Sandful Now, who was calling this on Wharf Radio. I was able to listen to it while watching the visual feed from my Watch AFL. Absolutely magnificent footy, two absolutely great teams. That is potentially grand final potential matchup if things could go certain ways. But the Crows just too good, and Neve Kelly proving why I think she's got a very good shot of being one of the AA wings this year, because she has been magnificent, and winning a game off her boot in the final minutes was absolutely sensational.
yeah, it was crazy. Like, I think the thing that really stuck out to me was that home team advantage really is what willed those girls over the line. Norwood Oval was so loud on the coverage. I think really proves that getting down to the game and supporting the girls makes a huge difference, because the Crows were behind for the majority of that game and they managed to pull it out at the end. And like, it was just back and forth the whole time. Probably some of the best skill you're going to see in AFLW was on show in that game. It was phenomenal. And another, I mean, Garner was incredible again. Still on, honestly, best and fairest favorite. It's going to take a lot for her not to win it at this point, I think. But look, it would be incredible if we get this matchup again in the finals and see if it goes the other way this time, because it was so close.
This Rouge team, they just I saw the statistic. It's like the teams that really mess with them are the top three sides. Like they have great records versus everybody else in the competition, but it's the other top teams in the comp that they have a few struggles with. Again, they played magnificent. They led for most of this game. It's just one of those one little issue when it came to coverage off a stoppage, and Neve Kelly with great wing play was one of the things that burned him. But this was a North team that played really, really well at a hostile environment. Norwood is very difficult, as you said, super loud. The SA fans get out and they support the women, both of the Crows and of the Port Adelaide Power when they're in Alberton. It's great to see. This was a magnificent game of footy again. This shows North is there. they're there. They're just for some weird reason can't finish games when it comes to the top sides. It'll be fascinating to see how this goes. But again, Groves, magnificent performance. So much fun to watch. Caitlin Gould's goal, the second goal that she had where she fought through like
Oh,
three tackles was absolutely fantastic. I
could
gotta
be goal
give
of the
her on
year,
that one.
honestly. That was so it was so good. Like, yeah.
I don't know about that. Chloe, a couple of Chloe's goals this year. Will sorry, Red Hat Donnie Taylor.
Yeah, look,
Sorry,
yeah.
but
I mean, obviously, but if there has to be a third option in there, then the
definitely
goal
for
goal
sure.
for sure.
Sorry. We're not trying to go Swans too much heavy on this one, but I agree with you. That's got to be up there for contender because her to fight through three tackles and to be able to put it through is absolutely fantastic. We'll go to last game, Kinetic Stadium down in Frankston, and the Hawks get a win over Port Adelaide 40-32. And I thought a magnificently played game. This is two expansion sides. Again, I kind of feel bad for Lauren Arnell because they just keep falling short in these games. They play really, really well. Again, Beck Goddard coaching this Hawks team. They're a scrappy, tough, physical bunch. They love to tackle. They get after you, and they've got so much speed. This is a Hawks team. I think they've got the right connection. And Emily Bates finally gets her first goal in Hawks colors.
Yeah, it was a great game. It felt like an arm wrestle, really, really back and forth, really, really competitive. Both these teams, I think, are probably the most similar to each other, not just in like the fact that they're both expansion teams, but the way they play. They're both very physical teams. And Hawthorn came out on top. I think it could have easily gone the other way as well. Like it was just one of those games that it didn't feel like either side had play like runs of being more in control, and Hawthorn just managed to get on top at the end. I wanted to say Hawks definitely best pride jersey that they had the jersey of the round for me. Absolutely beautiful. I was in awe and shock when I saw that. It's stunning. And with Port, I feel like I don't know what exactly their percentage is, but I feel like they just can't win games. They've really struggled to just finish and put a team away. They've done like, the Hawks, it was close. The Suns, they drew with. West Coast, they just lost, and the Swans, they felt like they probably could have won. So I feel for their team because they're really close and they're really close to doing really well, but they just fall short as in the final quarter, I guess. So I think they're going to be a good team next year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, pulling it up 62.2% is their percentage. So it's not like it's a horrible percentage. I mean, the worst
For
is
where they
West.
are on the ladder.
Exactly. But and that just kind of shows you the way things go. But this I agree with you. Port is they've constantly played in competitive games. The only thing that bugs me a little bit is, and Coach Arnella said it a couple times, is undisciplined 50s and free kicks has really cost them at times. It really has switched some games on them momentum wise, and I think it's really, really hurt them in a couple of games this year that probably has cost them at least a win or two potentially. But that is going to do it. All nine games have been talked about again, as we kind of said, an absolutely cracking round of footy. Again, as each game ended and I was rewatching them or watching the highlights to double check to get my notes down. I was just like, what a round of footy. I mean, I just could not believe how fantastic it was. You saw upsets, you saw great games, you saw classics, you saw blowouts. It was a little bit of everything. It was magnificent. So we jump to what I call the burning questions. These are quandaries that have been rolling around in my head since the last game. Final siren went through. So I asked this. We kind of covered it a little bit, but I just want to discuss it just a little more. It was some crazy results. Again, some results I was not expecting. What was the biggest surprise result of this weekend for you, Polly?
Definitely St Kilda Brisbane. Like there was no thought in my mind. I thought that was it. I don't actually do AFLW tipping, but there was no thought in my mind that was like that's an easy Brisbane dub. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no way St Kilda can beat this team. So that was definitely the number one shock. I mean, I am a very biased Swans fan, so I did think we were going to win, but that probably was a shock to a lot of people that we did end up getting on top. And I mean, yeah, deep down, I didn't actually think we'd be able to win that one. So that was definitely a shock too. And I think maybe the closeness of a couple games. Like I don't think I expected Hawthorn and Port to be as close as it was. I think that I thought maybe Hawthorn would get on top, being like sorry, more on top being at home, and how well they played against the Swans. It's the last game I watched Hawthorn play. So yeah, there was a lot of back and forth, but I mean, can't go past that upset of the season for sure.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. St. Kilda Brisbane was just out of nowhere. Like I remember watching this game, and like I said, I was just could not believe what I was seeing. The neutral, I will say it this way: the neutral part of me was worried that Collingwood game could get out of hand on Sydney if the way it goes. So for them to win, as I said in my tipping at the end, is I do tipping, and I kind of do this reverse psychology. I tip against them because I know it's a win-win either way.
Oh,
If
see,
Sydney
I'm the
loses,
opposite.
I get the tip right. If Sydney wins, my team wins. I don't care
Yeah.
about my tip. It doesn't really matter. So it's a win-win either way. And I know some people are like, Coach, that's just weird. I know. But
No, I get it, but I'm the opposite. See, if they win, if I don't tip them and they win, I will never forgive myself. Because I do
I
men's tipping, I just don't do women's tipping, and I've been tipping for about 17 years. I've not once tips against the Swans. Like I just it's never gonna happen.
I love the loyalty. I really, really do. I really that is awesome. I've not gotten to that extreme. And again, I don't mean that in a negative way at all. But I'm one of those. I've done that several times in the men's. It's like I go into a game not with not a ton of confidence, and I tip against them. And like I said, I tell myself that, hey, if I get the tip wrong, that's okay because my team wins. If I get the tip right, well, I got the tip right. So either way, it kind of works out. I know it's very bass backwards for many people on that one. So all right, I'll jump to my next questions. The finals ladder is still in flux. There's still some spots up for grabs. There's still things to come. So there are several matchups that will affect the eight this year. Besides the Swans game, because I know you're going to be watching that with eyes glued to it, especially considering it's the last game of the round completely. So the Swans will go into that round knowing what they need to do to make finals and what they don't. What game are you going to watch to keep an eye on because you know it's going to affect who makes finals and who doesn't?
I mean, honestly, everything. I think every game in this round could make an impact on the ladder. Like if you look at who's playing who, there is definitely a lot of who is going to happen. But that being said, I think Suns Essendon is going to be the game of the round. Um, it's that is, I mean, they're fifth and sixth at the moment. I think top of
Mm-hmm.
my head.
Yep.
And the Suns, if the Suns win and Brisbane lose, the Suns could come fourth because they have that draw,
Mm-hmm.
which is like very, very insane to think that the Suns could finish in the top four. But then also Essendon have had an incredible season, so they could also easily win. So I think that's going to be a very even game. It's going to show, I think, how good the Suns actually are. Top of my head, I don't think they've had too much hard competition. And I think Essendon might have had a bit more than they have. So it'd be really interesting to see. That's definitely the game of the round for me. And I think that's going to really help shape that middle pack of the eight. And then the entire Sunday, any of those teams can make the eight. So it's going to be a crazy round. Also, I will say the Suns Essendon game is a free game. If people are in the Gold Coast and want to go to a game, you should go to that because you don't have to pay for a ticket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's actually up in Mackay.
Oh, it's in
Great
Mackay,
Bear
that's right.
Great Barrier Reef Arena. That's
Sorry,
gonna
if you're
be
in the Great Barrier Reef, go to the game.
yeah, that's gonna be I'm 100% with you. Game of the round is that one. Fifth, sixth. It really is going to shape the middle section of the finals. But I'm 100% with you. I mean, I mean, three games on Sunday, ninth versus 11th, St. Kilda versus Carlton. I mean, that's an eliminator to see who is not going to make finals. Whoever loses that one, the winner has a good shot, depending on how results go. You have 10th versus 12th and Collingwood versus Richmond just after that, which could be an absolute classic. I mean, if Collingwood win that, they have a chance to make finals. If Richmond somehow win it, both teams are probably out. And then Sydney v Fremantle out in the West. Fremantle has a chance to spoil the Swans party, and the Swans have a chance to potentially cement themselves into the finals at that time because they will know what they'll need to do to make finals for sure. So I'm Sunday is the day The game that I think I'm the most intrigued when it comes to it, because it's going to shape the middle part of the finals. I agree with you. Is Essendon Gold Coast. That's going to be an absolute classic on Friday night, which starts at 3:45 a.m. my time. So I'll have to watch it on delay, but that's okay. I can watch it. I can watch it at work. It's not a problem. So I am absolutely fantastic. So I always end my burning questions with a supporter question, and we've already established pretty well that you are a Swan supporter. So I asked this: how excited are you that in only their second season, the Swans are on the cusp of potentially making finals?
Donnie, it really hasn't hit me yet. Like it wasn't even in the realm of possibility that I thought this could happen. Like I thought maybe at the most next year, probably our fifth year in the league, we'd make finals. It's gonna cause me a lot of joy. There's going to be a lot of tears. I don't even care how they do in the finals. The fact that they made finals is enough for me to lose my mind. Some people might know I accidentally said that I would get a tattoo if they made finals on the Bevies podcast. And I'm like, when they lost to Hawthorn, I was like, sick. I don't have to get a tattoo now. I don't have a single tattoo on my body. And then they beat and then they beat the doggies. And I was like, well, we thought they were going to beat the doggies. That's fine. And now they beat Collingwood. And it's like, oh, this is looking like more and more of reality. But it's fine. Like, obviously, that doesn't, that doesn't bother me. When we got home from the game on um, Sunday afternoon, I turned to my partner and I said, just so you're aware, if they play finals, I will be flying wherever the finals is. I will be finding a way to go because there is no way in hell that my team is playing the first final ever and I'm not going to be there. So look, it makes me well up just by the fact that it is even in contention. Like we've gotten very lucky, and I'm very thankful to this team because who would have thought?
I'm 100% with you, and I will for those that don't listen, the Bevy of the Bloods podcast is a huge Swans podcast, and Polly has co-hosted with my good pal Chris, who's been on the podcast before, and they made a pact that if they make finals, they'll both get a Swans tattoo because neither of them have a tattoo to celebrate the finals contention. So there's part of me that is barracking so hard for them to make finals just because I want the proof of them getting the tattoo. But it leads for great. It's a great listen. Like legitimately, I love what you and Chris are doing with Steve on the podcast. I think it's absolutely great that you guys do that. I love that the women are getting a podcast themselves. I know I started this podcast to help women's footy get that expansion. So for you guys at the Bloods at the Bevy of Bloods podcast to cover the women's as well as you do, I want to thank you both for that. Please let Chris know that I love that. I had the pleasure of hopping on it and chatting a little bit of footy earlier this year, but I love what you guys are doing. That's absolutely magnificent. And for me, the excitement, I can't really put it into words because I went into this season a lot like many. I wanted a win, a win.
Yes.
So when they beat GWS, I was like, again, I am not afraid to say this. I shed a few tears. I was so happy. The game ended like 1 a.m. I couldn't get to sleep until 4. I was so excited. I was talking with so many people because I was just happy for the girls that had to go through 10 games the previous season and not get a single win, especially considering they should have beat Essendon, but we won't go there. Um, I know. I can tell Polly's
It's been a
reaction.
year. I'm still not over it.
I know, but it's one of those, especially considering the girl that kicked the goal in that game isn't even with the Swans anymore, with Molly Eastman, who's now with the Richmond Tigers. But I'm just so proud of the performance. I think what Coach Scott Gowans is doing is absolutely magnificent. He's created a brand of footy that is so much fun to watch. He's put together a list that has been magnificent. I know it really stirred up a lot of the originals when Chloe Malloy and Lucy McAvoy came up to Sydney, but it's evening the competition out. And then to see the progression of some of our youngsters, Ella Heads playing another great season, Brianna Tarrant showing why I loved her addition because she's a great back defender, Cynthia Hamilton showing why she was the best girl in New South Wales. Seeing Lisa Steen play so well on the wing has been magnificent. Amy Whelan, Paige Shepard. I could go on and on and on. And then
Don't
our
I
Irish
say don't
recruits,
forget Sophia Hurley.
Sophia Hurley. Well, Sophia and Montana Ham, I knew they were going to be great. I mean,
Yeah,
you're not top level girls in Victoria and top five draft picks without being great. But Cynthia Hamilton, for some people, she was a little bit of an unknown commodity. New South Wales girls, unfortunately, they don't get the publicity that some of the Victorian girls and some of the South Australian girls get. But just it's the little known players, the players we don't talk about as much that have been absolutely magnificent for like I said, Lisa Steen, Amy Whelan, Paige Shepard, Lauren Seghetti,
Tanya Kennedy,
Tanya Kennedy, of the
Julia
Irish,
Sullivan.
yep, Julia O'Sullivan, Paris McCarthy, I think has really stepped up and did some great effort plays the last couple of weeks. It's been magnificent to watch. I've just absolutely enjoyed it. I I don't care what the result is if they make finals. I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to be proud of this team because this is a building block. This is a building block that I think is only going to help. And then for people like you, Polly, that go to Henson Park and put 5,700 butts on the hill and watch this women's team play so well, I think Sydney could be a destination club if they continue this because they are really showing that the Swans and Sydney fans really are there for the women's team, and it's absolutely magnificent. I'm not even in discussions because I know that they had asked Scott Gowans, would you like a finals game if you hosted it to be at the SCG? He goes, nope, I wanted a Henson, and I loved that.
What?
I thought that was
Yeah,
absolutely
there's no way
fantastic.
in hell we'd play that at the SCG. Like it's silly, silly even to consider it. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, because it's already got the cricket pitch down anyway, so it's not going to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
like, it's the atmosphere. Like, it makes me so proud to be a Swans fan. The way the girls are playing, incredible, but just how much of a community we've managed to cultivate in 2 years. Obviously, we've been in Sydney forever, but like, there are so many people I see at the games every week, and there are so many people putting so much work into making these games fun. And there's a reason we have the highest average home attendance, because the games are good to go to, and they're not just about going to the game, it's about community now, which is so lovely. And I think, like, I don't want to put any other teams down because I know everyone's trying their hardest to get people to come to the games, but I think it's something that hasn't been cultivated at other clubs. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
went to Melbourne last weekend for the Swans Doggies game, and it just didn't have the same atmosphere that the Henson Park has, or even North Sydney Oval for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just absolutely everything about the club at the moment. It just makes me so proud to be a Swans fan, and uh, like the fact that there are 5,700 others of me that are going to the games, and I don't know the membership numbers, they haven't been released yet, but there's a bunch of members, and it's just so nice that the the girls are getting the respect that they deserve, because I don't think they even got that last year. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's very, very lovely. So it'll be time to be a Swans fan.
Yeah, definitely. I think the rumors I'm hearing is it's over 6,000. I think this one's maintained the number one membership for the women's. And I think it's over 6,000. Last year was like 50, 55, 5,600. So it's the numbers are still there and people are showing up in droves to either North Sydney
Yeah,
Oval or Henson Park. Like it's, it's hard to say which one is better because I love North Sydney Oval's, the look of it it's especially the tree on the one side of
the
the
fig
ground behind
tree.
the goal.
Yeah,
The fig tree is absolutely. I think it's fantastic. But
I yeah.
Henson has got a
It
great vibe there. So it's like both are. I think both are
it's
great
very different.
grounds.
It's a very
Exactly.
different atmosphere. As someone who's gone to both venues this year, like Lawson Yeover, you can actually sit in the grandstand, which is lovely if you're not really a wanting to sit on the hill kind of person, which I
Hmm.
totally understand if that's not your vibe, especially for people with mobility issues and things like that. But at the same time, I live maybe 10 minutes away from Henson Park. So the
A
fact that
little
it's
bit
very
easier.
much my local, it's I obviously appreciate it so much for that reason.
Hmm.
And the vibe is like, for people that don't know Sydney, are going to get a bit in the weeds of Sydney at the moment. They're very actually not very close to each other, because the Sydney area that it takes up is quite significant. Like, if you think of how much the area Sydney takes up and how much GWS takes up, it's two very significant portions. The type of demographic that you get in North Sydney is very different to the type of demographic you get in the inner west. So because I live in the inner west, obviously fit more in at Henson Park. But that's not to say that the people at North Sydney Oval are bad or anything. It's just a very different atmosphere.
Mhm.
It's very much more like a cricket atmosphere. It's a bit more subdued and like, oh yes, good mark. Whereas the Henson Park one is very much more like, yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just yeah,
Yeah, one of the things I remember watching on the coverage is like the 8 or 9 young boys that were behind the goals on the left side from the camera angle,
yeah,
like they were banging on the things, "Go Sydney" or "Sydney," and it was absolutely great. Like I loved it. I thought that was absolutely great. So now that we've gushed more on Sydney, I know people are going, "Oh my gosh, coach." Yeah,
skip
I know.
the
The
15
issue
second
sometimes
50.
the issue sometimes with getting a fellow Swan supporter is I could go for days. I know. So all
Yep.
right, we'll ring it back, ring it back. All right. So we go to the section of the podcast that I kind of take over just the littlest bit. And this will be fun for you, Polly, because I do a team of the week where I kind of go
Okay.
through the statistics. And like I said, I watch all the games and I pick out basically a all-star side per se,
Yep.
using the American term. I apologize. So I'm gonna run through this real quick, and in your thoughts, I put a little bit more emphasis on goals and score involvements a little bit, so it kind of helps me analytically kind of split hairs sometimes with some of these. So you may hear some names that you're kind of like, huh? But it's always kind of fun. So all right, so we start in the back line. I coach up here, so I always start with defense. At the full back line, we see Carlton's Harriet Cordner. She got pushed forward, kicked a couple of goals, but she is a defender for the most part. So I thought I'd be nice and let her have that. And then Gabby Newton of the Western Bulldogs. She's had to go back this year with all of the injuries, and she's played really, really well back there for the Doggies. The halfback line, see West Coast Charlotte Thomas, Richmond's Elise Sharon, and Sydney's Lucy McAvoy hops in on the halfback line. On the wings, we see Adelaide's Neve Kelly and Sydney's Sophia Hurley. I know she's gone forward a little bit, but she does tend to play the wing a good portion of the game, so I thought I'd throw her there in the wing. In at the rock position, we see Collingwood Sabrina Frederick. You kick 2 goals as a rock. As a rock, I gotta put you in as the starting rock. In the guts sees Gold Coast Claudia Whitford, Melbourne's Paxi Paxman, and North Melbourne's Jasmine Garner. At the half forward line, seen Essendon's Sophie Alexander, Sydney's Chloe Malloy, and Hawthorn's Greta Bodie. At the full forward line, sees Fremantle's Megan Kaufman and Essendon's Bonnie Too Good. On the bench, I have one defender, one midfielder, a rock, a forward, and a utility, a player kind of from any position that I think should join the team. On the defense, North's Emma Carney. At the midfielders, we see Geelong's Georgie Prespakis, which I know I a little shot at Chris because he could never say Prespakis correctly, so I gotta
Yep.
gotta give him a little bit of shit on that one. The Rock Westerns, Alice Edmonds. The forward sees Melbourne's Kate Hoare, and my utility is Hawthorn's Emily Bates. So that is the team of the week. I know it's a lot of names really, really quickly. Your thoughts on the team of the week this week.
Yeah, I have no notes. That was, I would say, pretty spot on. That like I mean, obviously I'm gonna say, oh, but Beck Privatelli had a great game, but like that's just me being a Swans fan. I'm just gonna be obviously very one-eyed. But no, like all those girls had phenomenal games. And I had like a best player from each game in my notes, and
Mhm.
pretty much everyone is made the team. So I think that's a pretty solid team of the week.
Yeah, it's and then normally I will be 100% honest with this. Normally I do power rankings, but for some weird reason going into my notes, I forgot to write them down. So I'm not even gonna make an attempt at my five because I normally it's my homage to the first part of the podcast, which was Fourth and Long, which was started by our producer Ross. And he loved doing power rankings. He loved who's the best team. And I've always done my power rankings as kind of a what have you done for me lately. So the last 5 games is what I kind of look at.
Yep.
And I'm not even going to waste the time trying to do this because I've still got last week's and unfortunately when you have North that's lost was fifth, they would probably fall out. And then Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, Collingwood. Well, Collingwood lost as well. So can't exactly keep that power rankings there. I'm not even going to try to do that. So that is on me. I will take the L on this one. L under the forehead for coach on that one. So let's jump to it. The part of the podcast I love, which is always so much fun, and especially considering Polly has already told me that she doesn't do this normally. So we're going to tip. I know we're still early. I know still teams and injury list, yada yada. But I want to have some fun on this. We're gonna tip the final round games on this. So let's look at it right here. We jump to it Friday night, as we said, Great Barrier Reef Arena up in Mackay, Gold Coast Suns, Essendon Bombers. Can the Bombers go up north and get a win, or can the Suns solidify their finals at home?
I think the Suns are going to win. That was my gut instinct. So I did do my tips for this round. Obviously, I don't do them normally, but I did put my chips in.
I love it.
They're on the sheet in front of me. But I really like look to be fair, these are two teams and I love the way they play. I love watching these two teams play. So it's very much splitting hairs. But I think the Suns are just going to pip them. Not that I don't think Essendon can't travel well. It's more just I think if I think about the entire season, I've liked the Suns play style just slightly bit more than Essendon, so I'm going with the Suns.
I like it. I like your thought process. I'm gonna tip Essendon in this one. I don't do Bonnie Too Good and Maddie Prasparkas are game winners, and I'm interested to see. I'm gonna love this midfield battle. Charlie Robot and Maddie Prasparkas, a couple of absolute bulls in the middle. They're gonna be so much fun to watch. I agree with you. I think Gold Coast depth in the midfield is going to be interesting to see how George Anscon and how the Essendon Bombers handle it. But Bonnie Too Good is an absolute monster up forward, and I'm not sure if Viv Saad's going to be able to stay with her. And I think that may give Essendon a little bit of an advantage going forward. So I'm going to tip Essendon in this one, but this is literally a coin flip.
Yeah,
Either team
it
could
could
win
go
this
either
game.
way,
Oh yeah,
and I
even
think it's going to be one to watch. Could be another
exactly.
draw, second draw of the season. So
Wouldn't
yeah,
shock me a bit at all. All right, we jump down to Witten Oval as the Western Bulldogs host North Melbourne. Unfortunately, doggy supporters, as much as I would love to see you get two in a row, you are going to be facing a Ruse team that is going to be angry. They are going to be motivated to make sure that they stay into at least third place. I think this could be a percentage booster. I have North, and I think I have North big.
yeah. I if the doggies manage to win, it's going to be an even bigger upset than St Kilda or Brisbane. Like it,
Mm.
I really can't see a situation where Western Bulldogs manage to pull one out here, unfortunately. But look, I think North are going to want that percentage boost as well. So I don't think it's going to be a very nice game to watch either. But I could be wrong. Crazy things have happened, but yeah, definitely North for
There,
me.
there's only one way I see the Doggies winning this one, and that's if North rests players for the finals because there is no pre-finals bye. That's the only way I could. And again, this is no disrespect to the Doggies, but when you have Emma Carney, you have Jazz Garner, you have Kate Sheelor, you have Emma King, you have Kim Rennie, you have some of the talent that's on this North roster. If they show up and if they play, North is just too good. The
Yeah,
Duggies are injury riddled. I love Ellie Blackburn. I love some of the Duggies players, but talent wise, they would be significantly underwomaned if they come in full strength. If North rest players because of the finals, then I think it brings the doggies into it. North win this one. I just don't think the doggies have the horses, unfortunately. So we
yeah.
jump to what I think is an intriguing one between Al and
Mm.
at Alberton Oval over in Adelaide as the Port Adelaide Power face the GWS Giants. I'm fascinated. Who do you like in this one? Because this is an intriguing game for me.
I was talking before about how I don't think Port can close out games, but I also said GWS also can't close out games. So it's going to be one of those ones where it's very, very even. But I think the way that Port plays versus the way the GWS plays, I think Port's going to win this. And they have a very good following. So I think that the home crowd is going to will them over the line for this one.
And for me, it's one of those. I love Port Adelaide, but their undisciplined acts bother me. And this is
Oh,
this is a
yes.
GWS team that can be physical. They can get under your skin a little bit. And I think this is one of those where Zarly Goldsworthy has another game of the round and puts herself on the map again. I'm gonna tip the Giants. I know this is on the road. I know it's Alberton Oval, which is never an easy place to play, but I like the Giants in this one. There's something sneaky about this Giants team that they pop up when they need a performance. They get it. Zarly Goldsworthy had to go into the middle this last round, in which you have to face Robottom and Drennan and Claudia Whitford to the middle. I'm not sure Port Adelaide's midfield is as deep this year. Hannah Ewings has taken a step back after last year's rising star. Abby Dowrick has been playing amazing. and Aaron Phillips, I think, is a step or two behind her best, unfortunately. So I like the Giants in this one. I know it's an upset a
Yeah.
little. I know it's a little bit of a surprise on that one being on Port Adelaide's home ground, but I like the Giants in that one. That one's going to be a fun one. All right, we move to it. Next game down at GMHBA Stadium. Yes, I try to make sure that I say the letters in the correct order. Is Geelong Cats v Hawthorn Hawks, the old men's rivalry, but unfortunately, I think Cats just too good in this one. Hawks will stay in this one. I think it'll be competitive until late in the fourth quarter, and then the depth, McDonald, Morrison, Becky Webster, Prasmakis, I think is just going to have a little too much for the Hawks. Cats win this one, but I think this is competitive for at least three quarters.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. If, however, I think if Geelong can get their goal kicking in order, like they didn't last week, I think we might have a different story. I think Geelong could run away with it because they do love playing at GMHBA. But you never know what you're going to get with the Hawks, and I think that's the hard thing to pick because the Hawks could very easily show up like they did against the Swans and beat Geelong. So, but I think the Cats fairly easy win.
All right, we jump over Mineral Resources Park out in Perth as the Crows fly west over to face the Eagles, and kind of like the Duggies, worst possible time to face it. But here's the thing: the Crows can kind of play this a little cagey because they're locked in. They are a top two side. It does not matter what any of the results; they are going to finish second. It will not surprise me if maybe they give a player or two a bye week if there's any niggles. So Crows win this one. I don't think this is a blowout. I think they win comfortably, but I think they kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit to save a little bit for finals, considering there is no pre-finals bye.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing to consider because as well, if in the next game Brisbane beat Melbourne, Adelaide will finish first if they beat West Coast. So there could be a little bit of like, we want to put as much percentage on as possible and potentially come first. Not that it makes that much of a difference if you come first or second, but there may be a little bit of like that mindset going
Grand
into it.
final host is the only thing. That's the only
Yeah,
difference
which
is that
they also don't really want to play at Norwood. So it's also like, I don't know how much they'll care about that. So look, it's gonna. I think even if they rest players, it'll still be an easy Adelaide win. Unfortunately for West Coast. But yeah, it's just one of those seasons for them, unfortunately.
yeah, Crow's just too good. They're too talented. They could rest a few players and they're still talent wise going to be just a little bit better than the West Coast Eagles on that one. As you kind of said, one of the other games that I think I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. Brisbane Lions at home, up in Brighton Homes Arena, up in Springers against Melbourne. I'm interested. Your thoughts on this one because this is an absolute classic potentially sitting up considering last year these two played in a grand final and it was an absolute classic.
Yeah, so like this week, we had North v Adelaide, which could be a potential final. This week, we have the other potential final. Like there are so many potential outcomes for this game. I think Melbourne could easily just run away with it because Brisbane have looked undisciplined and they when they get frustrated and get behind, they don't seem to know how to get back to it. However, they are playing at home and they could, like I talked about before, Melbourne haven't been kicking straight very much. So maybe Brisbane managed to get on top of them in that sense and able to kick more goals. This game could really, really go either way. But I think just the track record of Brisbane recently losing to St Kilda and the Pies, if I'm correct, I
Mhm.
think Melbourne come out on top and really cement that minor premiership.
Yeah, Melbourne already had their one hiccup for the season, and they did the same thing last year. They hiccuped early in the year against Brisbane at home, and then went on a tear to get into the finals, and then played really really well. The D's, this is one of those where I'm gonna. There's three matchups that I'm looking at: the ruck battle between Laws Pierce and Tyler Hickey, which I think Pierce should win pretty, and then it's who gets the center clearance dominance because whoever does is going to have that advantage. I think the D's depth, I think, is going to test Brisbane, especially considering the D's midfield is physical. And this speedy, flashy, quick midfield of the Brisbane Lions does not like to get hit. And if Melbourne can tackle and be physical with them, I think they can throw them off their game like they did in the grand final. I think Melbourne win this one on the road. I know it's not easy to win on the road, but I think Melbourne has found their form at just the right time. I think they're going to be a little too physical for the Brisbane Lions midfield. It's going to be a close game. This is going to come down to the fourth quarter, but I think the physicality of Melbourne is going to be able to kind of neutralize Brisbane's finesse and skill. So to the second game of Sunday, which would be absolutely a cracking game as Carlton face St. Kilda. Winner in this still has a chance for finals. Loser is done. Icon Park, Melbourne. Who do you like? Carlton, St. Kilda.
Uh, I really think it's going to be the Saints. I can't see Carlton winning. The only thing I can think is because they had such a terrible game against Essendon, they might be, a bit fired up from that and wanting to come back and prove that they are a finals worthy team. But the Saints just look so good against Brisbane. They just played so well that if they can do that again against Carlton, I don't think Carlton have a chance. I just don't think Carlton have showed up since they beat the Swans.
Fair call. Fair call. I like that. I'm going to tip St. Kilda, but here's the one part that scares me is that when you win a huge game like that against Brisbane, the next week you are prone to be underperform because you put so much into winning that big game the previous week that you kind of step back a little bit. And sometimes if you face a team that's going to punch you in the mouth right off the bat, Carlton has that ability. I think
Mm.
St. Kilda win this, but this one scares me. This one scares me
Yeah,
because Carlton is a team on its day, has the talent and has the ability to come up with anything, especially Darcy Vesio coming forward. Their young midfield is absolutely magnificent on their day. This is one of those tip Saints, but this is my keep an eye on one because
mm.
Carlton is a scary proposition for the Saints team because a loss by St. Kilda and neither team potentially could make finals. So we jump to it next game of Sunday. Again, the intrigue just keeps growing as it keeps going on. Victoria Park in Melbourne as the Collingwood Magpies face Richmond. Collingwood must win to have a chance for finals. Richmond's season is over. Can they play? Spoiler in this one. I'm going to tip Collingwood. I know Ruby Slicer is out. I know Butler potentially could be back, but probably not. Pie's just a little bit too good for an injury riddled Richmond team, but I think this is still close. You've still got
Yeah.
Katie Brennan, you've still got Mon Conti. Richmond is not going to roll over in this one. They're going to push the Pies, but I think the Pies are just going to be a little bit too strong. But I think this could be an absolute classic. Come down to the late fourth quarter. I think Pies just too much.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Richmond, unfortunately, have enough in the tank to beat this Pies team. I think the Swans got very lucky. Like, as in, they played very well, but I think they got lucky beating this Pies team. If you think about who they've already beaten, and especially the Pies at home, I just don't think Richmond have enough. It would be, I think it's closer than people may think going into it, but I still think the Pies will come out on top.
Yeah, 100% with you. And then it's like they knew last game of the round out in Perth, Fremantle Oval, as the Fremantle Dockers host the Sydney Swans. I'll let you have this opportunity because I know who you're gonna tip because you've already told me. Sydney Swans, Fremantle. Who do you like?
Yeah. Look, even if the Swans hadn't won a game this season, I still would have picked the Swans. But that being said, there are things to consider. The Swans will know how much they need to win by to make finals, or if how much they need to keep because they potentially everyone below them could lose and they don't need to win and they just need to keep it within a certain margin, but they'll know what they need to do, which is I
Mhm.
think really beneficial for them. But there are things like the fact that the Swans have never been to Perth before, which scares me because they've never done the 4 hour flight. They don't know the getting used to the after that long of a flight and all that kind of stuff. So I think Freo could potentially win on that basis, but look, my heart is always going to say the Swans, so it's going to be the Swans.
Yeah, I'm gonna tip Sydney in this one because I think Sydney's ball, like if I don't take the Perth flight as big a deal, which I think they're probably going to fly. They're probably going to fly over Friday night, so they'll get acclimated for a day or so. So I think they'll be okay. My worry is if they fly any later than then if they fly later than Saturday would be a little bit troublesome for me. So I wouldn't be surprised if they fly over Friday night just to get acclimated. I think Sydney's ball movement is going to cause Fremantle issues. I know Turbo's back, which I mean is going to make an interesting matchup potentially to see who she try to take Laura Gardner, or does Coach Gowans throw Chloe in there to kind of throw a spanner when it comes to Turbo? It'll be fascinating. And the biggest thing is, can you shut down Anya Tig? If you can shut down Anya Tig, you can shut down the Fremantle Dockers. And I think Alice Mitchell, Bella Smith could potentially have some shifts back there, playing back. If they play good enough team defense, I think they can shut down Anya Tig, which can shut down the Fremantle Dockers, which I think is the perfect combination. And I don't think Fremantle has the defenders to be able to guard the multiple headed monster that Sydney can be if they can get enough delivery through the midfield, which I think they'll be okay with on that. Mimstrom will be an interesting test for Bella Smith in the middle, and Alexi Hamilton. So they just kind of like what they did with Sab Frederick. They just need to kind of neutralize the ruck dominance of Fremantle. But if you can do that, I think Sydney all together on the ground has a little bit more than Fremantle in some place. But this is going to be a cracker. Fremantle is not going to just let Sydney have it. They're going to push them. There's still the oddball chance of a few things go their way that Fremantle could still potentially make finals. I don't see it happening, but you just never know. So it'll be a fun one. Sydney should win, but this is going to be nerve wracking till the final siren for
Yeah.
sure. So
As
that
much as I like us knowing what potentially we need to do to make finals, it's going to be a very stressful weekend. Having to
mhm.
wait till 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon well, more like 7 o'clock on Sunday afternoon to know whether we're playing or not. But look, it's going to be a great round all in all.
Well, I'll do this for you, Polly, just to make you feel to make you feel a little bit better. So I have the ladder predictor on here, and I just wanted to see, is there a way Sydney could play finals even if they somehow lose to Fremantle? And it is
Oh,
possible.
okay.
Here's the thing, though: a few things got to go their way. Carlton have to beat St. Kilda, and
Okay.
Richmond have to beat Collingwood.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility,
I don't think
though.
it is either. I really don't think it is either. And because the Essendon Gold Coast game has no bearing on it. So literally the two games previous for the Swans are going to be the helper, because I mean, if St. Kilda wins, Sydney lose, St. Kilda's in.
Yeah.
If Collingwood win and Sydney lose, even if yep, yeah. So Sydney, if St. Kilda win and Collingwood win, Sydney, if they were to lose, were to fall to 10th. If Carlton win and Collingwood win, they would be ninth. If Carlton and Richmond win, they would still stay in eighth. So live ladder predictor fun. I know the ladder predictor sometimes it can be both good and absolutely
The
terrifying.
live ladder's going to be going wild on
Yeah, well,
Sunday.
especially like it's going to be like the men's. There's going to be a live ladder with the Sydney
Yeah.
game in the bottom corner saying
Yeah.
each goal that
Yeah.
Fremantle
Every
scores, Sydney goal.
point is
Yeah,
just.
yeah. It's going to be quite the interesting one there for sure. So, all right, that is going to do it for our round nine AFLW review. It's been fantastic being able to sit down here and have a chat, Polly. I genuinely appreciate you hopping on. I know it's always fun to gush over the Swans, even if I try to be as neutral as possible on the podcast.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. And look, I'm happy to talk footy anytime. So to get to do it on a podcast and people actually get to hear it is something special. So thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. I love this opportunity to be able to gush Swans. Sometimes it's not always easy, but I do appreciate it sometimes. So that is going to do it for our episode today. Thank you so much for giving us a listen. Again, keep track of it. More AFLW coverage. We're getting closer to the off season. I have a special treat. My off season supporter series. I'm going to talk to Scenefull and Waffle supporters to try to cover and find out more about each of the clubs in those particular competitions, and a couple of very special supporter series chats. One that's a Swan supporter that I cannot wait to have happen. I've been talking with this gentleman for a while. I really want to sit down and have a chat with him. I guarantee I really want to do this one. So I will make sure that that happens over the off season. We will get through the long summer months in Australia, the winter months for me over here in the States. We will get footy and have footy all year long. So that'll do it for us. We will be back again very soon with another episode of Donnie's Disposal.